Jenn Foster here with Elite Expert Insider. We are really excited today to talk to Rob Scranton. He's going to give us the inside to money. So I'm really excited about that. He is the owner of the Financial IQ, a training system to help you to have an infinite banking system. So we're getting into what that is, and he helps people to grow their wealth. And I just learned the other day there's a difference between someone who's rich and someone who's wealthy. So we're going to get into that. So welcome, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jen. Thanks for having me on.
Great. Well, let's start with how you got into having your own bank system, and then we'll talk about what it actually is and how other entrepreneurs can do it. So, how did you even get into money in the bank system?
Yeah, so my first degree is in accounting and
Mhm.
finance, and I worked for a public accounting firm doing tax returns for large companies, rich individuals, doing audits of companies in the Chicago area. I was a financial analyst for the Florsheim Shoe Company, and I was doing what most people typically were doing, putting money into those qualified plans. They had the big company meeting. They brought us all down and showed us this the paperwork you filled out. And so I was dutifully following that plan and putting money into this system. I don't claim to really totally understand it or didn't I wasn't excited about it necessarily. It just seemed like you looked around the room and that's what everybody else was doing. And my parents said that's something that you ought to do. And then about 2008, during the housing crisis and the bubble there, 2009, from one quarter to the next, my portfolio, my retirement, like half of it, 45% of it disappeared in like three
Wow, like your
months. And I'm like,
401k, or
gee,
what
this,
exactly was it? The 401k.
yeah,
Okay.
yep, at the company. I was like, well, gee, this kind of sucks. And I was at the time trying to get a new house, and because my wife she was an entrepreneur, she had a business and sold it, and because she didn't have a W-2 wage, when we went to the banks to apply, even though we had enough money in the bank to pay cash for the house, we just didn't
Hmm.
want to. We wanted to protect our cash flow. They basically wouldn't give us a
So
loan.
crazy.
And so I was a little yeah,
Right.
isn't it? I was a little sarcastic with the loan officer. I'm like, so you're telling me if my wife was working the fry station at McDonald's and could produce a W-2, you would consider us more qualified and less risky than if we had the money in the bank just to buy the house outright, but just wanted to, pay for it over time. He's like, well, you don't have to put it that way, but I guess you're kind of right when you say it like that. I'm like, okay, I just want to know, where what the rules are here and how this works. And so between those two experiences, having so much frustration with traditional banks and realizing like, gee, I'm totally subject to whatever they decide and whatever rules that are in place, that when I go apply for a loan, if I don't know what they're going to be looking for in advance, I could be in a very healthy financial situation and not qualify or be able to get a loan through them. I'm like,
Yeah.
that just stinks to have somebody else have so much control over my financial destiny.
Yeah. I think
And on top of
I
that,
always think of
just
that,
being,
like, how interesting is that? I always ask that question. Like, I'm a little curious, like, why that's so interesting. And then you kind of get through the bottom line of why do they want you to have a W-2? Because if you lost your job, then they could have your house. So the bank really just wants, the assets. They don't want you to have the assets. They want to own the assets. That's how I feel it. It's like, okay, we don't want that, right? We want to keep our assets. We don't want the bank to be in control of it. And so, yeah, keep going with what you were saying.
so yeah, so I heard for the first time about this infinite banking system, and I thought, oh man, that would be great to have your own bank. And whenever you needed to take a loan, you would just ask yourself. And I saw how inside this banking system, I could also double as my retirement account, my emergency fund, my wealth chest for investing in things. It was kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It could perform all these different functions at the same time. But the more I investigated it, I started to think, boy, this almost sounds too good to
Mhm.
be true. If you've heard
Yeah,
of
that's
that
what I was thinking.
before,
Wow, how
and
do I sign up? This sounds too good to be true. Wait, maybe I should look into this more. This doesn't sound right.
well, I did that because with that accounting and finance background, I kind of took that real analytical approach to it if I'm going to do this and commit to it. And I was almost like Saul, if you're familiar, biblically, Saul, the persecutor, determined to, prove that infinite banking wasn't true, that it was false, that it couldn't work, that it was a scam. After all, with my degree and work experience, why had I never heard this before? There's probably a little bit of pride in there as well. But the more I dug into it, and looked into it and researched it, I realized that no, actually, absolutely every single thing that they're saying is 100% true, completely accurate. And from that point on, I went from Saul, the persecutor, to Paul, the evangelist, kind of telling everybody that I possibly could get to listen to about this because it is unbelievable. There's just no other financial tool or instrument out there that exists on the planet with these kind of features and benefits. That you can do the types of things that you can by taking back control of your money, having dominion over your finances, and really taking back the banking aspect of our lives. Because the average American will spend their entire work career and lose 35% of all their earnings over the course of their entire life to
Mhm.
interest. If we could just take back that one aspect of our
Mhm.
finances and put ourselves in control of the interest, and so that we can recapture, reuse, and recycle every single dollar that comes through our life over and over again, multiple times by using ourselves as the bank instead of losing that money in the form of interest to other people. It would make a tremendous difference for every American's finances and their children and their
Mhm.
grandchildren. And I'm starting to get a little enthused and
Yeah,
excited about
I like it. You can
talking
stay on
about.
your soapbox. I like it. Well, let's ask. I'm going to ask you this though. So, how do I get started setting up my own bank system, my own banking system, or
Well,
the infinite banking system?
we've kind of touched on it. Yeah, we've kind of touched on a few highlights. Now, I think it probably would be valuable if your listeners are not familiar with this. There's a couple resources that I would
Mhm.
recommend. There's a bank called Becoming Your Own Banker by a gentleman named R. Nelson Nash, who kind of put all these ideas around this into a book for the first time. But the reality is, this process is the key. The product that we use to make this process work has been around for over 200 years. In fact, my parents, had these products. My grandparents had these products. My great grandparents had these products. My dad took out a policy that's designed to be a banking policy when I was an infant. And when I was explaining all this and getting excited and telling him all about it, he's like, "Oh, I should probably show you something." So he went and pulled out this old policy. It's just a death, burial policy, basically, and it was like $10,000 death benefit. And the numbers are really small, but it's the concept that's so critical. The annual premium was only $50 a year for this policy. We're talking about, in this banking system, before your listeners go running for the hills, we're talking about creating a banking system by using an overfunded whole life insurance policy with a mutual insurance company that pays
Okay.
dividends. And we can get into that later, why all of those features are extremely important and necessary for this. But my dad showed me this policy is $50 a year, and then he showed me the cash value inside the policy was growing because it just didn't provide a death benefit, but it provided tax-free, continuous, uninterrupted growth inside the policy as well. And that cash growth was $350 a year for the $50 deposit that I was putting in
Wow.
there. So Jen, that's a
Yeah.
700% cash on cash return on those dollars I'm putting in there, and it's guaranteed because it's in a contract with an insurance company. You can never have a bad year. It's not subject to fluctuations and ups and downs of either the real estate market
Mhm.
or the stock market. It's going to happen every single year, and people have been using these products for over 200 years. We don't have to guess about how they're going to turn out. It's not the latest fad or new hyped up financial
Mhm.
scheme. This is something that's been around, that your grandparents and your great grandparents were well aware of. That's what a lot of people used to save their money in these policies because it was far safer than the bank. During the Great Depression, 3,000 banks in the United States went completely
Right.
out of business. Zero mutual insurance companies went
Huh.
out of business because they're in a much more predictable industry. They deal in
Mhm.
death, and everybody's going to die, and it's very
Right.
predictable. So it's one of the most steady, consistently profitable businesses on the
Awesome.
planet.
So,
So
no,
sorry if I
that's
ran a
good.
little bit.
How do you find the right person to talk to? Because Back in the day, I heard about whole life insurance, and so I went to a financial planner that I had been networking with, and I walked out of there without a whole life insurance policy. I left with a term life insurance policy, which is totally
Uh,
different. I know it is, but like I don't think he even knew or could sell me a whole life insurance policy. So how do we find the people to talk to that can help us set this up?
well, that is, a very important point that
Yeah.
you make. Anybody can sell you a whole life insurance
Okay.
policy ultimately. If they know what
Yeah.
that is, maybe the
Maybe he
person
didn't
you're talking
know.
to wasn't even sure what that
Yeah.
is. Because there's over 1,000 insurance companies in the
Yeah.
United States,
Well, and
and
I think he was
anybody
a
with a life
broker,
insurance.
a financial broker. So who knows?
Okay.
Like, yeah, he didn't work for specific companies. So maybe I need to find where
You know why they call them a broker,
because they're
Jen, don't
broke.
you? Because they're
They help
broker than
me
you
be
are.
broke. Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just
So
joking. I,
so
I
we
couldn't
can
help
find a
get
we
that
can
one
find
across.
someone who can sell us a whole life insurance policy.
Yeah, anywhere on any street. The problem is if you just walk into, because sometimes people hear a podcast like this, like, oh, I was listening to this guy. This sounds really great. It sounds like this infinite banking, what he's talking about. You need to buy a whole life insurance policy. And they, go into the State
Mhm.
Farm office down the street from, say, yeah, I heard about it on this podcast. I should have a whole life insurance policy. Can I have a whole life insurance policy? The problem is the way those have traditionally been sold, they'll buy that whole life insurance policy and they'll have end up with $0 of cash value the first year, $0 of cash value the second year. They might have enough cash value by the third year to tip their barista at Starbucks and actually start seeing some cash start showing up. But the way we design these, that's the most important thing. The way it's designed and set up in the very beginning to be optimized and designed specifically for and optimized for the infinite banking concept, where we'll see, over 60% of whatever people deposit in premium deposits available in that first year in the form of cash value. By the second year, usually 85% of what they deposit available to use in the form of loans. And by year 3 or year 4, we're actually kind of hit that tipping point, shaking that money tree. We're actually seeing that we have more cash value available than what we're depositing into the policy itself. So extremely important from that standpoint. And if people want to know the specifics of that, we have a free training. Any of your members or your listeners are free to go on there at yourfinancialiq.org, and they can register for that free masterclass. And we go through probably a good 45 minutes to an hour of everything that there is to know about the infinite banking system. And if that's something that is of interest to them, we'll give them an opportunity to discuss it further and what their options are around that as well. But good point that setting it up properly in the first
Yeah.
place is a big
Yeah.
key. Or, talking to somebody who even knows
Right.
what it is, I guess, in your
Right. So
case.
my next question would be like, how much money do you have to put in each year? Because maybe like I always feel like, oh, I probably wouldn't qualify because I probably need to have $1 million portfolio and I need to have, all these real estate assets or I have have be a real estate investor so I can borrow from myself and make interest on it. Like, what are the parameters and how much money do you have to put in each year to get the growth you're talking about and to have and to be able to use it as a
Well,
bank
at
and
a,
use it to pay. I heard you can use it to pay your car payments and stuff, and you go to yourself for the car payments instead of going to the bank to get a loan for a car, right? So how does that work?
yeah, in that master training, we go over
Okay.
exactly that. I mean, I don't know how many of your listeners would have gotten any of the money back for any of the cars that they
Now,
bought
usually you
over the
lose
course of
about
their life.
10 or
We,
15,000 the minute you drive it off the lot. So,
That's right. Well, I've got 3 cars sitting in my garage, and I got all the money back for all those cars, and I still have the cars sitting in my garage. And in that training, we can show you exactly how you or your listeners can get all the money back for all the cars you're ever going to buy, drive, and own for the rest of your life. I think that's pretty exciting. And to answer your question about what do I need to get started, I always tell people, hey, start where you're at so you can get to where you want. And for some people, you know, depending on their age, I mean, it could be as little as putting several $100s a month away. Or sometimes we talk to people about like, well, you've all heard that you should save, and put 5 or 10%, depending on who you listen to, into savings. Just do that initially. Start saving. Think of this as your glorified savings account that you can borrow against. And really, one interesting thing, when you borrow against your bank to pay debts or expenses or invest, you can actually earn interest on that same dollar in two places at the same time. Because while you borrow that money, you're not actually borrowing from your life insurance policy. You're borrowing from the general fund of the life insurance using your policy as collateral. So it allows you to pay off something that you were maybe paying 6% interest on. Meanwhile, you're still earning, 5.5 or 6% interest inside the policy, even while you're loaning it out and investing it somewhere else at 6%. And so you're really earning in two different places at the same time with the exact same dollar. And I just haven't found that feature or benefit with any other financial tool or instrument on the planet. I've been looking for about the last 14 years. So if you know of anything like that, Jen, please let me know.
Okay, I'll let you know. Well, let's talk a little bit more about, okay, so now if we go through your system and we go through the steps and we get our own bank system, now how do we use it
Mhm.
to even make it grow even more than the 6%? Is there ways you can use it for real estate or for like what other kind of things can you do with it?
Absolutely. We have a large real estate community of people looking for hard money loans and people looking to deploy that cash that's building up inside their banks. Maybe they don't have debts, maybe they don't have things that they need to pay off, but they're looking to invest and deploy that money that's growing. And by the way, all that money that's growing inside that privatized bank grows tax free. So we can use it now or later or even in retirement completely tax free, and we can even pass it on to our children tax free someday in the future as well. So we have a large real estate community of people looking to, that are needing loans for house flips. And so you might find a guy that says, "Hey, I need $100,000 to do this house flip. I'll pay you 6% to have it for 60 days." So you pull the money, you take a loan, like we talked about, give him the $100,000. You earn the 6%, and at the end of 2 months, he pays you back the $100,000. You put that back into your policy, into your privatized bank, and you earn an extra 6%. Meanwhile, you never stop the constant compounding and growth and cash accumulation inside the policy itself, even for one single day. Everybody talks about compound interest. Everybody's heard about compound interest, but nobody ever uses compound interest because you might have it in Wells Fargo in your savings account and you think it's compounding, but guess what? As soon as you take that money out, it stops the compounding completely. Whereas with this, we never stop the compounding. So every dollar, it's exciting to me every time I get a chance to make that premium deposit because I know every one of those dollars that I'm putting in there, I'm going to earn interest on for the rest of my life
Right.
because it's never going to stop that constant compounding and growth ever, even for a single day. And I think that's the one thing that's hard for people to really get or grasp or understand because this just doesn't exist with anything else, on the planet, the ability to do that. So that's where I'm, earning constantly inside the policy. And I just loaned it out to this real estate investor. As soon as I get my money back from him, I'm looking for somebody else to send that money out to. You want to make as many of those green men go to work for you. And you want to make sure they all come back and you want to make sure they bring their friends with them when they return back to you as
I
well.
like that. I like that. Well, that's great. Well, tell us again how people can get started, where they can go to sign up and get that free masterclass.
Yeah, I would say again, those two resources are the best place to start. R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, you can get that on Amazon, lots of other places online as well. And then if they want to watch that free masterclass we've made available for your listeners, that's at yourfinancialiq.org, yourfinancialiq.org. They can sign up for that free masterclass and literally in an hour learn 98% of everything that there is to know about the infinite banking concept so that they can start digging in. And we'd be happy to talk to them about how that maybe applies or how they could implement their life as well. At the end of that video, we'll give them an opportunity to do that as well,
Great.
Jen.
Thank you. Well, we'll put that up in the show notes so you guys can go get that free masterclass at yourfinancialiq.org. Thanks so much, Rob, for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me, Jen. So fun that we live, a stone's
Yeah,
throw
we
away
live a
from each
stone's
other
throw
here.
away, and I've been playing around and doing some more, having an extra basket. So I might have to, come to you for my next real estate deal. So that sounds like a great plan.
There we go.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to Elite Expert Insider. We apologize that Melanie isn't here today, but she'll be here on the next one. Melanie Johnson, my business partner. If you want to publish a book or if you need help marketing your book, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.